Welcome to GIS Day, the panel discussions. This panel is going to revolve around the COVID crisis that we're going through right now in the Houston area and in Texas and in the world in general. And we're going to discuss how COVID and GIS married up, how we use GIS to look at COVID, to look at the areas where COVID was high, to look at the numbers, to see how GIS influenced decision makers in dealing with the COVID crisis. We're going to go through and introduce each of the panelists. I'm going to give them time to introduce themselves. And we'll begin with Kevin. Kevin, go ahead and introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Hi, my name is Kevin Strybos. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I currently work with Austin Public Health. I'm working on the COVID emergency response efforts, helping to run the Travis County Austin COVID dashboard that the mayor and city council and the public use to get their information on the daily numbers regarding COVID in the city. In the past, I've worked for public health nonprofit in town known as Children's Optimal Health. I've worked with USAID in Peru, and I've worked with Apple Maps as well. So I have a bit of a wide range of a background in GIS. But yeah, really enjoying working on the public health stuff right now.
Outstanding, thank you. Penny, why don't we introduce yourself?
Hello, I am the Fort Bend County GIS Administrator. I worked on the COVID response. We've since handed it off to HHS. They got a GIS specialist so that they could provide more information and spend more resources there, because Fort Bend County GIS covers everybody. So I'm pretty immersed in elections right now, but we're also working with drainage and every other department you can think of. And I've been in GIS for 15 years and have a very varied background, but yeah, I'm loving every minute of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Xuan, go ahead. Introduce yourself if you would, please.
Hi, I'm a senior GIS analyst at Houston-Galveston Area Council, and I'm the one who is maintaining our 13 county region COVID information dashboard. I got my graduate degree in geography from Louisiana State University, and I here in Houston-Galveston Area Council, I work on a lot of mapping and GIS data processing jobs.
Wonderful, wonderful. And finally, Brooks, why don't we introduce you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Brooks Andrews. I'm one of the GIS managers at the Houston-Galveston Area Council. I oversee quite a few GIS projects, one of which is the COVID dashboard that Xuan just talked about. I've been there since 2012. Before that, I was at Texas State University. I got my degree in planning and GIS there. And including undergrad, I think I've been in GIS for just about 10 years.
Wonderful. I just realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is Nick Humphrey. I'm a GIS analyst with Montgomery County here in Texas. I got my start about 20 years ago in the U.S. military. My last duty station there was actually instructing new GIS analysts in the military in the ways of geospatial analysis. I've worked in the pipeline industry here in Houston and gas and oil, in the military, both with doing military stuff and then also training. And now I work for the Montgomery County government. So that's the five of us. We'll now start with our discussion. First question to you, Penny. How do you utilize GIS to tell that story of COVID? How do you utilize that GIS?
So it became apparent that there was an issue. We're pretty spread out as far as departments go. But I was hearing a lot about what was happening with HHS and got myself invited to one of their meetings, one of their kind of command meetings. And over, I heard how the phone banks were just being overrun with questions, and they had very little information out there. So you basically have resources going towards repetitive information being sent out and people not knowing what's going on. So we decided to put up the hub, which was COVID specific, nothing else, only based on the health portion of COVID. We did a dashboard, very simple, and put a lot of other information in there too, like where testing sites were, where meals were being handed out. That turned out to be a really huge part of the response. We had what was closed, what wasn't closed in different applications. The hub is like a website light that just gives you an opportunity to present a bunch of GIS information tied with videos or images. And that's the thing, is that you have a lot of information out there. You have a lot of statistics. You're in an unprecedented time, and a picture really helps people. You know, an image really speaks to people and helps them understand what's going on. So I presented that to HHS. They did some modifications and we got it up and running. And it actually was a huge part of them getting the funding that they needed to expand their effort. That's one of the things that the head of HHS told me, was that had it not been for the dashboard, they wouldn't have been able to present the data the way that people would understand it and to convey their message. So GIS was instrumental in helping to have people see what was going on and where. So wonderful. We had different web maps, started with precincts, drilled down to jurisdictions and zip codes. But I think that just really helped people kind of tap down some of the, misinformation that was going on out there, and it also gave people a good idea of what's happening.
Wonderful, wonderful. Some of you, Kevin and Xuan and Brooks, you've also created these dashboards. Xuan, talk a little bit more about the dashboard that you've helped create for the Galveston Area Council.
Okay, so we firstly created a dashboard, only for our internal use, because a lot of the employees at TxGIS, they have children that their classes were canceled on the last semester, and they need to take their time to go home to take care of their children. So that's why we created a dashboard with the like the number of cases and the school districts and the school closure information. But after that, we feel like we need to expand the audience for the dashboard and include more information, such as testing sites, which is very important, and test result, like the percentage of positivities, to let the public have an idea of how the pandemic is evolving through time. Mm-hmm. And that's why we kind of expanded the original dashboard a lot to what we have now. Right now it has just a lot of information on the dashboard, and also some of the dashboards are created according to certain government regulations as a guideline of reopening the business and so on.
Wonderful, wonderful. Kevin, as somebody from Austin, so that's not in the Houston area and probably didn't have as many cases as Harris County in this area does, did you find that the dashboard was still as welcomed as it seems to be here in the Houston area for the public?
Definitely, yeah. The dashboard here has received a lot of hits or views since we've released it back in March. I was actually in Guatemala serving in Peace Corps when we had to come back due to the pandemic. And luckily when I came back, Boston Public Health called me and they said they needed an analyst to run this thing called a dashboard. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. But I learned how to use it quick. And since we've developed 2 dashboards, the main surveillance dashboard, which has the map of all the cases and all of the kind of big numbers, like number of daily cases and deaths and things like that. And then we released the key indicators dashboard, which is more for looking at hospitalizations and moving averages. And then more recently, we released a dashboard that a lot of the school districts are asking for that looks at testing rates and specifically positivity rates, because school districts are using that to measure bringing back students and how many students they want to have in the school. So there's been a lot of support, and even people like my grandfather who has no idea what GIS really is. He knows that I am the one updating the numbers at night, and he will ask me whenever I talk to him, are you still running the dashboard? I'm like, yes. And he's like, all right, well, I'll be looking for it every night. And it's just, you know, funny because a lot of people didn't even know what these dashboards were, including myself really, prior to this. And now it seems like everyone's using it to understand what's going on. So I think it's a really useful tool. And I see it being used across multiple industries now, you know, not just in public health, but various different things. So.
Absolutely. So that sort of ties into my question for you, Brooks, in that, where do you think that GIS is headed in for future pandemics? You know, because I'm sure that we'll get over this one, but, you know, there are going to be others that come up. You know, do you see a role for GIS in helping the public in future pandemics?
Well, kind of like Kevin just said, it seems to be the best way to show numbers in geographies, right? So when I had a trip planned overseas when this was all going on, and so I was watching John Hopkins' dashboard really carefully to see what was going on in Japan. And then I noticed that other dashboards popped up on various federal sites and state sites. And then like Xuan talked about, we created our own. And since then we have another one for unemployment rates. And we're also gonna start one up, I think, to map mobility and a really lack of traffic since the pandemic. So I think it's a huge tool. And to talk a bit more about dashboards specifically, I've known of them. I think Xuan has created a few in the past for us. But this is the first time I've seen them kind of in droves telling COVID numbers and positivity rates for all parts of the state and the nation. So I think it's going to be huge. I think this may have been, I guess, I don't know if it's the right term, like a coming out party for GIS dashboards, because unfortunately, you know, it was because of the pandemic, but that's all I've really seen. Even the nightly news, I think CBS Evening News always shows a dashboard they have. So maybe it's the way to go, and hopefully it'll kind of spark some more demand in GIS.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I'll agree with that. Penny, where do you see GIS in general going? You know, as a field, do you see it growing? Do you see it shrinking? I think Brooks would say it's growing. Where do you see it as somebody who's been in it for 15 years?
So one of the things that I'm kind of an advocate for is the expansion of GIS and its use. There are so many different aspects of GIS that would appeal to people of different skills, from working out in the field to analysis, to interest in hydrology, to medicine. It's such an expansive field that I get concerned that we only seem to kind of pull in people with these high level degrees, which of course there's always a place for people with, you know, this kind of education. But I think it's really critical that we don't close the door on people with a passion, because to be honest, I had no experience in GIS until somebody asked me to join their team. I had never opened ArcMap. I didn't even know what it did, but I had a passion for it once I saw what it could do. And I learned it, and it really covers everything that nothing else has ever been able to. My creative and technical side, problem solving, being able to help people solve problems and see where issues are, being able to show something that people can't see for all the numbers. I see GIS growing exponentially. I think you're absolutely right about the dashboard coming out for us, because people didn't realize what GIS can do. And as soon as I did that, Office of Emergency Management wanted a hurricane hub. And so we've been working on that and different applications and things to put out once something happens in our area. But it's really opened people's eyes about how we can get information out that's not a stale spreadsheet, but a really interesting and informative picture of that information.
Yeah. So in building on that, Xuan, would you say the same thing? I mean, what did you do yesterday? Or I guess Friday? What did you do the day, on Friday or last week? Are you only focused on working on the COVID dashboard, or do you have other projects in other areas that like Penny was talking about?
Right now with the pandemic, I really devote a lot of time into things related to that, including updating the numbers, the numbers of cases, the number of tests, positivities, and I also have another dashboard for the unemployment issue that is related to the pandemic in our Houston metropolitan area. Yeah, so I also do update for that. And other than that, I also take some time to gather the data for like the biking and jogging data, within the region for our transportation team to do analysis on, and I think that's some of the most important things I've been doing last week.
Wonderful,
yeah.
Wonderful. Kevin, as somebody who is looking into GIS, what type of path? I mean, it sounds like you've done quite a bit. Working with the Peace Corps and now working with the health department and public health. What type of path would you suggest people take? Major in college, or what type of, how would you suggest somebody get into GIS if they're interested in it?
So I think I was very fortunate in how I got started in GIS. I was originally going to school for environmental studies, and then I transferred my track to be more GIS focused once I took a more significant role in my organization at the University of Texas, which was the Innovations for Peace and Development, and they focus on international aid and development, and they needed someone to do GIS. And I was like, oh, I had taken a class in GIS before. So then they wanted all these maps, and I really found GIS to be an enjoyable skill to learn, because not only are you doing all this really cool data analysis, which everyone wants nowadays, but you get to explore your creative side, which Penny talked about, and that's what I enjoy a lot. And I don't think you need to get a degree in geography, although that's what I got, in order to have a GIS background. But I think speaking to students in high school right now is just thinking about what do you kind of want in your job? Do you want to work on something creative and while having this kind of valuable skill set in data? And taking my background, for example, just learning GIS as my sort of data analytics tool, I was able to go work in Peru with the government and then come back and work with a nonprofit in public health, and then move over to Apple and work on their map system, and then transfer over to the city and work on different maps for them. And I think GIS just provides you a lot of ability to explore different fields. And so I don't think there's one set degree you have to get. I think it's just a matter of knowing that GIS provides all these different opportunities, and that when you're working on projects, think about, you know, how could a map help me tell this story? And then just take some courses online to figure out how to use GIS and become comfortable with it. And you know, suddenly all these people are going to start coming to you asking for maps, because maps are very valuable. So yeah, that's my advice.
Outstanding. Brooks, what type of advice would you have for somebody that wants to get into GIS?
It'd be pretty similar to what Kevin just mentioned. I don't, and Penny talked about this too, I don't think you need a GIS specific degree to get into GIS. The one that's right over my head here says urban planning, and in very small print, I think it says GIS and business. So it doesn't need to be GIS. Of course, you need to, you know, probably be familiar with it, but kind of like Kevin said, Esri provides all kinds of free resources. There's tons of other places you can get GIS training besides Esri. So my advice would be, and I think I've told this to some of the GIS Day participants in the past, is the first thing I would do is just get on Google Maps and play around. Download Google Earth for free. I think you can get for some free trials of Esri software too, and just see what it's like. Maybe tell your teachers in school that this is something I think is neat, and you can start to play with it. And then as you start to get towards the end of high school, check out any programs locally in community college or junior college, or even four-year programs, and just see if they have something similar. And kind of just, you know, I think I did the same thing. I think my first 2 years in undergrad, I think I switched my major like 4 times, and finally I found geography. And I stuck with that because I thought, I don't know, playing with maps was cool to me. Mm-hmm. So if it's something that you like and you think is interesting and cool to you, just test the waters, dip your toes in, and if it sticks, it sticks. If not, there's tons of other great things you could try as well.
Outstanding. Outstanding. I want to thank you all for joining me today with these questions. Does anybody have anything that I haven't covered you'd like to tell the students? Penny or Xuan, Brooks, Kevin? Yeah, Kevin.
Something I'd like to say. One thing to remember is when you do first start with GIS, just be patient. Usually people will drop it, or a lot of the time people drop it in the first course because GIS can be a very frustrating tool, but you can get free student licenses if you just go on Google and type in free student license ArcGIS. There will be a blog telling you how to download it. It's a little bit more complicated on a Mac, but it's doable. And from there, yeah, just play with the courses online that, like Brooks was saying, there's some really awesome maps. And if you do decide you want to have a more permanent tool, there are free GIS tools out there like QGIS and other things similar to it. So yeah, we highly encourage you to learn more about it and know geography is a very interesting subject that can be applied across many different fields.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining me. And this concludes our COVID discussion panel. Thank you all.